Hi, my name is Ciara Saylor. I am a senior at Sacred Heart, and I did costume design for Peter and the Starcatcher. For costume design specifically, that essentially just means that as we just learn more about the show and learn more about what the director sees for the show, we work alongside them to make sure that the show is costumed and everyone has clothes on and it looks great. I research the show beforehand and make sure that I have a general gist of what the show is and what it might look like, and that's when I start brainstorming my ideas for the costume design. I took about 5 or 6 of the main characters and threw together a slideshow of a couple of costume ideas that I would have for them. And then yeah, from there we just started picking out pieces. We originally went down to our costume storage. We're in there trying to see what we already have, and then from there we can make a checklist of what we still need, and that's when we go out and going to Goodwill and Plato's Closet and Target and Walmart and any kind of store that we can get to. Like, theater is so visual, and the costumes play such a huge part in that story and making sure that the audience is immersed in that time frame that we are trying to portray. It's just a straight up escape from the modern reality world, especially for a show like Peter and the Starcatcher that was set in like the 1800s. So I would say the biggest struggle within this performance for the costume designers were the time crunch. We really only had about 4 weeks to put together a main stage production. Going down to our costume storage, we actually realized that we don't have a lot of basics down there. We wanted a lot of neutrals, and that just was not down there like you'd think it would be. We really thought that like ensemble was gonna be a breeze, and it wasn't. It was some of our last thrown together costumes, believe it or not. Those trips to Goodwill were mostly just getting the basics that we originally thought we had, but then needed the time to go and get, because we just didn't anticipate that in the beginning. And then lastly, we also needed to hand sew 16 mermaid costumes, which was not an easy thing to do either. I personally do not have much sewing experience. My co-Bella, she at the very least knew how to manage a sewing machine. I really don't. I just know a couple little hand sews, and I know what can look good on something, but actually hand making all of that was definitely a struggle. And throughout Tech Week, it was, like climbing up a hill trying to get all of that done. We were spending time in the costume shop, literally 13-hour days in there, alongside classes and work that we had to do. Our tech schedule goes from 5 to 10:30-ish every single day during this production, and we would order food at 10:30, DoorDash it, and then work until we literally could not work anymore. So we were in the costume shop those days of tech, literally there until 2, 3-ish in the morning. We really just made sure that we were finishing up and tying up all of our loose ends. Our actor, Sammy Millerick, had to go from a cat costume to a Tinkerbell costume in literally 15 seconds, I think is what it was when we timed it. We were back there with our crew, making sure that everything was running smoothly. It was definitely a lot, but with being the designer, I felt like I was back there to give everyone a job and to make sure that it was organized and that no one overlapped each other or was bumping into each other, or no one was overly stressed, so that for the rest of the run, it was one of the smoothest quick changes in the show. My favorite costume in this show was probably Grace Anderson's Black Stash costume, just because it looked so like put together, but she played the character as so like sassy and girly that it was kind of fun to watch. She was in this like oversized big red pirate coat, a legit pirate hat, a nice ruffly white t-shirt with some legit like vintage slacks, and then she had like high-heeled boots on. So it was honestly just such a slay outfit. It had to be my favorite, and obviously the Black Stash, courtesy of Danielle Topa, our hair and makeup designer. I think that the most rewarding part of being the costume designer is once you are finished, you just genuinely get to like sit back and enjoy the show. So once you finally check everything off of your to-do list and can just sit and like finally breathe while watching the performance and watching all of your hard work pay off and look really good on stage, that's got to be like one of the most rewarding aspects of this position in particular, yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie McCabe, and I was the production stage manager for Peter and the Starcatcher. Some of the main duties of a stage manager is very like keeping organized, like you schedule all the rehearsals, making sure everyone gets there on time, taking attendance, taking reports to send to designers, being like, okay, you're gonna need to get this specific costume piece, just making sure the director has what they need. So like if we're running a specific scene, you want to make sure it's set up the correct way because we don't want to walk in and then have to spend an additional 10 minutes. So after you get the role of production stage manager, your jobs start right then and there because typically the auditions are a few days away. You really have to make sure the room's set. So there should be like sheets outside the room that people fill out because you need to know their schedules and their conflicts and their resumes and things like that. You have to work with finding the space. Like we were in the black box for the Peter and Starcatcher auditions. And so we needed a table that would fit all of us. And we had a very big creative team, plus our director, plus our grad assistant. So we had like 2 tables and all these chairs, and then also had to keep room for someone to actually audition. Once tech week kind of starts, the PSM takes like a step back from being like in the room because they really focus on the technical aspects of it and getting that running. And then like my ASMs were kind of running the backstage area, like furniture, props, that stuff, like working with those designers. And then once you get to an actual performance, the PSM takes on the role of calling the show. So first the boards were in the house and then they go to the booth. And I really just work with like lighting, sounds, projections to get all their cues into my book. So then I could work with the board ops and the spotlight ops to call the show. So I think it's just kind of like being a leader in that room. And then also once the show actually starts, you're really just running the show. Like I know like I've had directors say like, oh, now the show's in the stage manager's hand. If the stage manager's not there, you can't start the show because they need to call it. Obviously, all the bodies on stage are so important. Like you can't do a show without them either. But the stage manager really like runs it because from a technical point, you need them to like get the lights and the sounds and everything correct. So then you have those aspects. Those are really important. So a big part of being a production stage manager is the organization behind it. So our job is to make a rehearsal schedule using the cast schedules. So when someone auditions for a show, they give us all of their classes, any like work, any random things, like if they're on duty because they're RA, whatever the case is. And then once you have the rehearsal schedule, you have to share it with everyone. And then every day we send out daily calls, which are just like this like document that says like this time, this place, who's supposed to be there, who's excused, who's coming late, whatever the case is. And then the same for when show starts, you need to be like, okay, we need this much time to get ready, and then we want to have a company meeting, and then the house is going to open at this time, so we have to be in places by this time. So it's really scheduling everything out and working with the director on what they need, and then also the cast based on their schedule. And that's all like stuff you have to do on your own when you're home. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, let me go and do it like when I'm at rehearsal. Like no, this is like you put in all this work prior to rehearsal starting, because then when they start, it shouldn't be as hard because it's like you just think you get the schedule and you know when you have to be there, but we have to do a lot of like the heavy lifting to figure out when you can. I think it's very rewarding as a stage manager to get to watch the performance during opening night or whatever the case, like when the show's actually performing, watching all of these elements that you put together. Like if I'm calling cues and it works perfectly, then it's like, oh my gosh. Because in the Edgerton where we had Peter and Starcatcher, I could look over the audience and getting to see their reactions, and the cast would be like, oh my gosh, we saw you guys dancing to whatever song in the booth. So it's like, and getting to see them all live stuff that we like start at a table reading the story, and now we're here performing it, full costumes, full hair and makeup, and seeing all of these ideas come to life. It's just super rewarding to get to like sit back and watch and like be just proud of everyone that and everything they put into it.
My name is Andrew Sisti, and I was the assistant director for Fun Home. So my role as the assistant director is to aid the director in making his or her vision, I don't know, come to life, kind of. Some of my main responsibilities were to, while the director was away, was to help the actors and the principal cast members with their scene work, diving into the emotional levels and the different high or low stakes in certain moments and scenes, help the cast know where they needed to be at what times and what their motivations were at certain points in the show. You don't teach people how to do what they do, but you aid them in getting to where the director wants it to be by the end for the finished product. A lot of just watching closely to see, make sure actors were going on the right path with their characters, because we had done so much work through their characters that it's important that during Tech Week they don't lose that, because when you add all the other aspects and you have lights and like the whole house is dark and then there's music blaring in your ear. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be very distracting from your character and the message of the story, but it's important to stay true to that. And so watching during Tech Week, once all those things are incorporated, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I would take notes during the run-throughs we would do, and I would just make note of where I thought actors were maybe falling off a little bit, or when people were excelling. Because the way that the stage was set up was, I believe it's called portrait style, which means there's people on either side of the stage. There's like a longer rectangular stage, and then there's about 3 rows of seats on either side, and then there's a scrim with the music playing behind there, and then this is backstage. It gets tricky because your back is always towards somebody in the audience, and it's important to not make those people feel left out. You need everyone invested in the story and everyone feeling a personal connection to the characters. So that was actually, that was one of my selling points in my interview, was stressing the importance of making everyone in the audience feel equally as invested into the story. Just because you're sitting in the back left corner by the exit sign, or you're sitting, front and center, you should feel just as invested in the story and get the same message by the end. It's a lot of writing in the beginning. It's a lot of like note-taking, journaling, writing down blocking. Like my whole script is just covered in underlined circles, and I have like X's and O's and dotted lines. It literally looks like we're running like routes in football, and it's so funny, but it's not. It's Sean starts here, moves downstage left, and Aaron moves upstage right. It's so funny. I hope the audience understands as well, is that the actors go through these emotions, but so do the creative teams and the crews, because they're so invested in this project that it becomes another home to them, and it becomes a whole nother, I guess space where your mind goes. It's not necessarily a distraction, but it's kind of like I don't really know the word for it, but it's just it's good.
I'm scared. Am I falling into nothingness, or flying into something so sublime? I don't know.
My name is Erin Pellegrini. I am a junior here at Sacred Heart, and I played Medium Allison in Fun Home. The audition process was like every other one here at Sacred Heart and in the theater world. You basically prepare a song if it's a musical, or you prepare sides / a monologue if it's a play, and basically you go in with that song, and either you perform the monologue or you perform the song with the pianist for them. And it's usually a cut of the song, which comes with a whole other slew of responsibilities. And basically auditioning for this show, I picked out my song, and then I was like kind of like what cut do I pick out and what tells the best story at the heart of it. We auditioned in the fall semester. The show was cast around Thanksgiving break, and from then we started to learn music before we went into winter break, so that we'd have our music and our lines to memorize and become solid on during break, so that when we came back from break again, we were ready to just hit the ground running with blocking, scene work, etc. Now they were in person in the space and able to have that time to really kind of play with the material. Something that people really don't know about theater is that there's a ton of like character work and outside kind of processing that you yourself have to do. Like if I am journaling about my character and their background, I go into great depth, because that sometimes can even affect what I'm doing in the scene. In addition to that, we then did scene work. It takes time to really go through each scene, each moment, and each kind of relationship and character in the scene, you run it a few times and you get notes from ADs or directors, and you really go through it and just kind of play with the scene, play with the possibilities, and really adjust it to have the stakes, the peaks, and the valleys that it needs to have at that point in the story, and then for that point in the character. So a lot of people don't know how many times actors really run things and adjust things and tweak things until you see it before you. And especially in close, intimate spaces like the Black Box, the way we did it, it's different than a huge auditorium like the Edgerton. The character is a cartoonist, and she draws, and she has fun with that. And I don't draw, but people underestimate how much of a freeing kind of feeling it is to draw. It took me out of my shell. It helped me experience and be in the moment more, something that our director was really emphasizing at the moment. And it really kind of like put me into the shoes. It was really weird. I don't know. I've never really done something like that before, drawing because of the character draws, but it put a little bit of a different perspective on it. My favorite part of performing is honestly when you get on that stage, you are saying these words for the millionth time for you, you're saying it for the first time for everybody else. I had to go read the original book, Fun Home, by Alison Bechtel, because at the core you have to be familiar with the source material and the original kind of like story. It was still very useful and very eye-opening to see her language, her patterns, and the overall kind of attitude that she has towards her father, and also just about her life and her sexuality and her identity. It was really interesting to see that, because playing a real person that's like out in the world and out and about is like something completely different that I really didn't get the chance to do before this. It looks easy, but when I'm up there, I'm thinking about every little thing. I make notes for myself during the show. If the director doesn't give me notes on certain some things, don't worry, I already have them for myself. If you're looking at a show from the outside perspective, you're like, the lights go on because they go on. Most people don't know what a production stage manager even does. And it takes so much time to get every cue right, to get every light right, to get every sound cue right, to get the mics in the right level and spot. It's all a balancing kind of science, and the actors kind of just go along with the ride for that kind of part, and at least in the beginning of Tech Week, and then later in the Tech Week, you kind of get into costume. And I think it does help to get into costume and makeup and really feel the character, whatever that means. But in my opinion, also, the actors do so much work before, so that when that happens, when that stuff happens, it just, you slide right into it and you just do the show you did. If there's one other thing I wish people could know, it's that so much time and effort goes into something you see for one night. But that's kind of the beauty of it. That's kind of like it gets to live in that space and that kind of time forever.
Everything that's happening, there's probably like 10 people who had to work to make it happen. And you don't see that, you only see the people on stage.
As much as you can go home and take a nap and watch a movie and do what you have to do to take care of yourself, you're still worried about the show, and you're still wanting to make sure that everything is done with so much love and care to make sure that it gets done at the end of the day. Is how much care that you put into the show that you're working on.
Theater might just look like fun and games, and it's like, oh, you're dressing up in costume, you're wearing makeup, like that's your job, really. It's so much more than that, because you're conveying a message, you're telling someone something, or you're making someone feel something. Like that's so important, because people go about their lives and people have their jobs, they have their families, they have stress, they have work, there's just so much. And theater doesn't even need to be a distraction from that, but it can just be something. It could be anything. That's the beauty of it. It could be whatever you make of it.
And also just don't let theater die and keep on going to see theater, because there's something special about live theater. Go see live theater because there's something different about a person being in the room, living and breathing in front of you and telling the truth. You react differently.
It's what I want to do, and I'm never going to lose sight of what matters to me, and theater is what matters to me.